God. Okay, I think we're live. Well, good evening, everyone. So welcome all the listeners, viewers of Swara Media and followers of Law Offices of Mary Kennedy. Good evening, all. Today we are here on August 28th, Saturday, 3 p.m. Pacific time. We are here to talk about the recent immigration updates and some of the current or ongoing, current affair topics. So I have, my name is Raj. I'm based out in Sacramento. We've been doing this kind of sessions quite often, probably monthly once, and then we try to pass on the good message to the good community and keep them up to date in the current happenings on the immigration stuff. Today I have Bharathi with me. Bharathi is from Bay Area. Hey Bharathi, welcome.
Hey, Raj.
Yeah, so he's been my partner in crime for most of the Swara activities, and I'm pretty happy to bring him on board, along with me in this session. So, hi Bharathi, good to see you here.
Hey Raj, hi Mary and others. Good
Hello.
afternoon and good evening.
Yep, and we have Mary Kennedy, who's our special guest today. So she's with us. So we're going to be talking a lot of stuff on the current, in terms of the current happenings and the recent immigration updates. Folks, whoever is on the Facebook, YouTube, and radio listeners, feel free to text me on that number. We'll definitely take questions one by one. So here, today's main agenda is to cover some of the topics on recent plan changes or some of the premium upgrades for the H4 EAD to start with, and then we'll talk about the recent visa bulletin updates and September and October predictions. And then thereafter, we'll be talking something about the F1 visa stuff and 485 approvals and now downgrade cases, what the current requirements are. If there are any particular questions on each case, we'll love to take the answers one by one. Okay. With that said, so let's start the session today. We're going to be starting today's sessions with the first agenda item, H4B visas. H4 visas and EAD expedition. So Mary, as you know, so there are a lot of rumors going on, a lot of spectacles going on about the H4 would start. H4 premium would be initiating from September onwards. The current way that it is taking probably 8 to 9 months and all, right? What is your speculation? What is your take on that? Can we expect the H4 EAD premium to be available for the community in the September month?
Yes, Raj, I'm glad to be part of the session as well. Good evening, everyone. And the premium processing, the proposal for all the other forms other than whatever happening, like the H1B and the I-140s are the limited availability as of now for the premium. So when it came in 2020, approved by the Congress, and the decision was given to USCIS at the time to implement the premium processing with whatever the additional fees that is going to be required for the processing of the filings. Which seems to be a very good move. The reason, as you said, Raj, there are many difficulties that comes up with the H4 EAD. Not only the H4, H4 is as well as very delayed. On top of it, when it comes to the EAD, even though it can be the eligibilities, it can be applied only 180 days prior. Obviously, it's taking even 9 months is a lesser time because of the COVID situation and the biometric not able to done, which is part of the H4. Unless the H4 is approved, the EAD cannot be approved. So many limitations were there. So it's a very good move, and it is expected that September of 2021, USCIS is going to be moving forward with the premium processing for all these, and nothing has been finalized yet, but there is a very good expectation it's going to happen with fees of $1,750. The current H1B premium processing with a timeline of 15 days is $2,500, whereas they have proposed it. And there might be another question whether it's going to be H4 and the H4 EADs together. There is very limited information at this time, but I would say it's going to be separate fees. Obviously, there are not many people that's going to be coming up for the H4 EAD eligibility. So in that phase, then probably we are looking at 1750 separately. On top of it, definitely without the H1B approval, because H4 is definitely part of the H1B, so as a dependent. So probably there are very wide things that has to be counted so that the H1B also has to be filed under the premium processing with a 2,500 on top of it. There is going to be fees involved, but I think with so much of limitation that's going to be happening with the EADs not obtained, because there are so many people that have registered their LLCs or incorporations based on their H4 EADs. And the question comes whether I can be even on the payroll of my own company, where it cannot be if you don't have a valid EAD, but the perpetuality of the company can be in existence. So it's a very detailed topic, but I will limit it, and the probabilities are good, and it is going to be coming up in September 2021.
Okay, so good. So it's good to know that the companies can still withstand, but though they cannot run the payrolls, right?
Payrolls of the individual, right? If your H4 EAD has been expired.
Yeah. How about the cases where the potential H4, the H4s has given the fingerprints, and they've been waiting in the line for a long. So what kind of, and now the fingerprints is not mandatory, right? So
yeah, it has been completely removed for the H4s, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how is it going to be taking place? So let's say if somebody has given the fingerprints and waiting in the line, and somebody who's applying recently, so how that's going to be changed?
So I am assuming, so as there is no mandatory requirement for the fingerprinting, obviously, whatever the cases that has been filed in May, earlier to May, whoever has been done, as it happens with the H1B as well, you can always upgrade your filings at a later point of time, upgrading the, paying the fees and then applying the 907 form to it. So most cases, even though they had been applied at a time, earlier filings, which is pending for decision, has not been eligible. Definitely the new, once they finalize and then come up with eligibility, even those on the queue will be able to upgrade themselves for the premium processing.
Okay. So I think that, you answered my question, but, I would like to be a little more specific. As we all know that when there is a H4 EAD is kind of in the pending state, or they're waiting to hear back from the users, the EAD holders cannot work, right? But if the employer can, considering the current situations, employer can only hold certain time, right? Probably a month or two. So how is that going to happen? So the employment is going to be at the risk, but in terms of their status, and in terms of, let's say if anybody individually having their own firm, they still can run, they can the job and can run the, I'm keeping it a little kind of a restricted mode. So, right, how their employment status, and what are the documentation that they need to submit back once the EAD back. So do they have to refile an I-9 form?
Yeah, that's very
combined two parts
yeah.
here. I combined two parts here. I hope you got my point.
Yeah,
so one,
I do get
the I-9. Yeah.
No, actually, see, the complete answer, the one-word answer is, if you don't have a valid EAD, completely, just forget about the employment, okay?
Yeah.
So you're no way, even there's no grace period. The end date of your EAD is going to be the date that you can be on payroll of any employment, irrespective of whether it's for you or any other person. And there is no grace period. That's one of the limitations, right? When you look into the 485 EADs, they have with the receipt notice, they are eligible to work for 180 days if you have a receipt notice that has been filed based on the C9 of the eligibility criteria on the 485. But when it comes to the H4 EAD, the limitations are very huge. The day your EAD ends, irrespective whether it has been applied, how long, or whatever the criteria is, you cannot work. That's the one word answer. And it's up to you, definitely, there's no I-9 or anything that can be made eligible as soon as the end date is going to be the end date of the EAD.
Okay, perfect. Got you. Bharathi, do you have any questions on this topic before we move to the next one?
No, I'm good, Raj. Please go ahead. The answer was very clear and yeah, understandable. Thanks for that, Mary.
Yeah, so we have few folks online. if anybody have, I mean, a few folks on Zoom with us, if anybody have any questions on this topic, please unmute yourself, and we would like to restrict a few minutes here, and then probably we will jump on to the next topic. So if anybody having any questions, so please unmute yourself. I know Chandrakala has on this topic. So Chandrakala, do you want to add anything on this line? So, I think the answers are pretty clear, but if you have any questions, please.
Okay. Yes, Rajesh, I had a question. I heard there was news that premium processing might open up in September for I-765. So will there be premium processing for H4 EADs?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what we discussed about. Yeah, there is going to be definitely a proposal, and it's not yet completely finalized. So it's going to come up
Okay, thank you. I think I joined the live late, so I missed
just
it.
like later.
Thank
Okay,
you.
sure.
You have to pay fine actually, but that's okay.
Next time I'll be on time.
Yeah, thank you, Chandrakala. Any other questions on this before we go to the next one? Yeah, so Bharati, I would request you to take the next one on.
Rajesh, sorry. So it's a very, very silly question. Maybe I have this question on behalf of someone else. I thought about it, right? So is there any restriction on H4 EAD? Is it only, they can only be employed, or they can also do certain things on their own? Is it allowed like a consulting work? And so what is the limitation of H4 EADs?
Oh, the H4 EADs, once you have a valid EAD, you have a very big scope on it. You can register your, any company or any corporations, anything on your name actually, and keep it as a single member LLC or partnership, or anything can be done. As well as there is no limitation, like how restrictions are there on the H1B, like, you are specific to an employer. No more restrictions on that, and there is no the pay limitations of you have to be working for this, and this is what your eligibility criteria. It is a very huge scope on it.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Right.
So we were just discussing about it when we were preparing for this session in the morning.
All
My
right,
wife
okay.
and I were discussing about it. Okay, thank you.
All right.
That, okay. So Raj, shall we go ahead to the next one, or if there are
Yes,
any more
yes,
questions
please.
from-
Yes, please.
Hi, Mary. Are you able to hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
I
sir.
am.
Hi, Rajesh. So for H4 EAD, for raising an expedite request, will the job loss will be an enough reason for getting the expedite request approved? Like,
May I
have
know
you
your
filed
name?
subsequent?
May I know your name, sir? Where are you calling from?
Vamshi from Sacramento.
Okay, hi Vamshi. Yes.
Yeah. So you're talking about the current scenario, if I'm right. That's your question, right,
Yes.
Vamshi? Not about the
Yes.
premium processing, right? Yeah, see, the job loss as such, instead of a job loss such, if there is any other reason, right? Like, you have your health insurance through your employer, and then you're losing your not only a job, your health insurance related to that, and then so that might be a valid reason. And your driver's license, that was given as an option actually. If you don't have a driver's license, and then you have to, your end date is obviously might be on the end date of the H4, which is the H4 EAD as well. So with all these reasons can be said to be that you could get eligible for an expedited request. But recently what I observed personally was last month, they were able to, our office and such, I would say, able to approve with a quick call and explaining it as a reason. But this month, there are multiple reasons. And one of the reasons that was said was their involvement, USCIS officers' involvement in all the offices, because there is so much of going on with the 485s and to capture the visa numbers. They are not encouraging more of an H4 EADs actually. But health benefits, if you lose something related to that, and if you have a proof of it, and then you should be able to get it expedited.
Okay, and in the lot of forums, I'm seeing a lot of people are consulting with the ombudsman and congressman's help,
Congressman.
and raising the request, but I'm not sure if they're getting it approved. In some cases, they do it like 1 to 2 times, raising the expedite request and getting it approved. So I might go with that route, but probably I'll wait for another month and see if there is any premium processing that is going to happen in next month.
Right, that's a very good decision, actually. Like, see, there is nothing harm in, and I think looks like you have even a more than a month for you. No, that's not the scenario for most of them. That will also be considered when you're going to do the expedited request, because their people are your expedited request. If accepted it, you'll be getting it in 2 weeks time period. So in that case, there might be people on the line prior to you. But again, nothing harms. We always say that, like we even get some help from the local congressman office, Raja Krishnamurthy's office for our some other cases, and ombudsman office. It's always a good option for you to approach multiple steps to do that as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Swara Media.
Thank you, Vamshi. So let's move on to the next one. Next topic, Bharati.
Yeah, thanks, Raj. And before we start, I just wanted to thank Swara Media for organizing this. I think you have been doing a lot of useful sessions, but this is very relevant today, I think, because one, Swara Media being Indo-Western or Indo-American focused media group, most of your followers find this very relevant, right? So personally, Raj and I, we hire a lot of people for our company, right? And we have seen a huge change in the trend. We used to struggle so much, right? We used to wait for like 6 months for H1 transfer or amendment or any extension for our employees, right? Our colleagues. And even after 6 months, there used to be RFE, 2 RFEs, and then rejection and all that. Things have suddenly become better, right? Last few months, we see, recently I applied for a transfer and got it on the second day. On premium, I applied. I got the notice, second day I get my approval also. So things have changed a lot, which has given a lot of hope for most of our people here.
Immigrant community, non-immigrant community. You're right on that, right? Yeah.
Right. And this being like US is the country with the highest and most diverse immigrants, right? And we target people from our community who are one of the biggest beneficiaries of this thing. So I think this is very relevant. Personally, I am, like they say, most eligible bachelor. I am a most eligible immigrant who is going through the process of applying for green card. And my wife is also very keen on, very eager to get her E4 EAD and H4 EAD and start working or start doing something on her own. So, I really want to.
Yeah, so going forward, we're going to have a one checklist. Just like in profile, how many years of experience, right? So something like that, we're going to have how many H1 extensions you have done in your tenure in USA.
Right,
So,
yeah.
But Mary, thanks again. So again, these are all the closing statements as it is coming, right? I would request the team, all the listeners, viewers, and whoever is on Zoom, right? So the count is significantly growing. So all the listeners, viewers, and participants, I request you one straight thing, right? Immigration is not a joke. You cannot take it granted, or you cannot take it light. I know many corporate organizations have their own policies, and the individual employers have their have the regulations, but it is always advisable, and it is always right, it is always correct to take an expert opinion. And we have an expert here, and it is not free, and it is a free of cost for you guys. So leverage that, right? Shoot your questions. So in a website, the form is all open in MK Immigration Law website. So use that, leverage that, and she's at your service. So don't do any mistakes. Probably, again, life is, every life is different. At the same time, every immigration case is different. It doesn't mean that somebody's H1 is approved. That doesn't mean that it's not approved for you in second day. So take an expert opinion. Use Mary's help, in doing the right things, whether it is a small or large. It doesn't matter. Take an expert opinion. With that, let's move on to the next topic. Bharati, on you.
Yeah, thank you. So thanks, Swara Media, for that. And thank you so much, Mary, for taking out an hour or two on a Saturday afternoon or evening to answer our questions, right? So with that, I will jump on to the next agenda item. So what we are interested to know about is your predictions for September and October visa bulletin, right? So what have you seen in the last few months, especially in August? Based on that, what do you predict for September and October? And someone who joined first had this question, right? I think his only question was that, The only reason why he joined was that. I'm sure a lot of other people also have that on top of their mind. So your answer on that or opinion on that would be very valuable.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So when it comes to this, this big gambling kind of a thing that's happening, right? Like, just so many questions and thoughts and but they're happening. But with all this happening, as we know now, by most of us kind of know, but still, they want to hear from us, is something with the reason. There are two reasons that could have been the whole, as Charlie, Benham, like, just in his latest updates, which he started giving it in the last few months, was one of the things he said was there is not going to be any substantial movement for the October bulletin. That was a very, it was not that expected, actually. There was going to be the same numbers because the consulates were all closed. And so that was a huge expectation for the 2022, which was a very big disappointment for the non-immigrant community who has been planning for it for a while. So the reason was the amendment, which is being a hold in the House and which is supposed to be expected so that the visa numbers with the COVID situation, the unused numbers. I have some data that was collected today. I was just taking a quick notes on that. And when you look into it, when you compare to that of the family-based as well as the employment-based, processings, updates from the USCIS, it's very surprising to see that it's almost 1/3 when compared to that of the family-based. Obviously, family-based is huge numbers that gets filed. And that is the spillover is the only one that has been used for the employment based, but at the same time, the processing is almost the same, similar. But in that situation, you're looking at the third quarter data that has been issued from the USCIS was the family based was closer to 260,000 has been processed. When it compares to the immigration employment based, it was it was closer to 100,000, 102,000 or some odd numbers actually, closer to that. So with all these considered, Charlie was very clear to say that there is not going to be any substantial movement as expected, because there is a possibility of the capture of the visas if the amendment get passed in the House. And so we are just still waiting on it to know about it. And then the part of it, I think most of them would have been, that's a little more of a detailed topic, but quickly to talk about it. Definitely the visas that is getting spilled over, because there is more than earlier. It was like the 2-3 weeks before, it was like 100,000 visas are going to be getting wasted, but the predictions are now even more, because before September 30th, whatever the visas, if not used, that's going to be that's it. You're not going to be recapturing for the next coming year. And as we all know, the USCIS just gets it closed with the September 30th. With all these, so much of informations and datas and all those happening, more than 120,000 is expected to be wasted, if not with amendment. But one part of it was, if it's going to be the family-based, then definitely. So all these extra numbers came from the family-based, as we all know. So if this is going to be, this amendment is going to pass over, then you are looking at it to see that then the family-based spillover is going to be used only for this family-based. Then you are limited to, again, to that of the old numbers and everything for the employment-based category you're looking at. So I would say, we have to wait for how things are going to be moving on. Definitely, I would also be willing to have another call or a session, in case we are able to get it out. But the data filing will be moving, whereas the final action dates is going to be the same. And in this October bulletin as well, and that's what it is expected. And the data filing, which I was preparing myself for the call today, when we were just looking at many data, and just this is definitely just a number, and it's not something they can rely on or anything. So the data filing, there seems to be for the EB2, definitely there is some possibility in the November bulletin, which can move forward for 6 months, and then for the EB3, closer to 8 months actually. But at the same time, USCIS has to open up to accept the data filing, which they had been doing it in the, all this last year they did for the October. Probably this year they would, at least for a month, they will preparing themselves and they will be allowing the data filing as well. So these are the data. And one more thing on top of the amendment that is pending is, still with all the huge numbers of the downgrade cases that happened actually with the, EB3 to that of the EB2 and all those that happened in the October 2021 bulletin, it has not been, the data has not been properly entered, and they don't have a very, very clear picture, because see, as you can understand, any approvals, whether you file it under an EB2 or an EB3, when it comes to the green card, it's going to be only one visa numbers that gets used, right? So now all the data that shows is a person has been approved of an EB2 on the I-140, and then he would have been downgraded his case. So there are, conflicting like two different numbers, but when it gets to this gets cleared. So he's holding two different numbers, visa numbers. So when will this gets cleared is he gets the approval of the green card. So that is when the other number will get released. So there is very, very detailed information. They are still working on it. And with the huge numbers, it's obviously with the COVID, and the Texas Service Center is one of the service center which has a very huge backlog. As you all know, even we waited so long because all the downgrade cases went to the Texas Service Center, and it took closer to January of 2021, where the cases were filed in October, to even know that the cases has been accepted. It was not that easy because everybody was anxious to know that even if my case has been accepted, it's not the processing we are talking about over here. So with all these, the two main reasons, it's not going to be moving forward as expected. I know it's a lot more of details. I hope you both are very calm. I hope I made it clear what I mean to say.
So basically, in a one-liner, I mean, we're all eagerly looking forward for the date, right? So, what we observed from the summary is just to keeping it simple and straightforward. Probably EB2, 6 to 8 months, and EB3, another 8 months to 1 year. Is that a good idea?
Right, for the data filing, and then for the, we are talking about is the data filing and not the final action dates. So the final action dates, even though earlier into, whatever, Charlie was very open for, it was not there in the last 2 months of in his the videos and everything, whatever he's sharing about the details actually. So probably they're also still working on, and it's not only him, right? The USCIS cooperation is much needed. So probably once the September 30th, and I just want to add one more point to it. I think we had a smaller video done, Raj, earlier, where I was also saying, a month before itself, some of the senior attorneys were talking about, not to, for the spillover to get wasted, because it happens once in 30 years, 40 years. And with all this backlog, years of backlog and everything, they were even proposing to see that if USCIS can come up with a policy memo where they can approve using all those pending 485s, and later on, they can try to see the processing done, and anytime the revocation of the green card is a possibility. But again, this is all easier to say than to be implemented. So I would say just we have to wait and see.
Gotcha. So I know we have around 10 to 15 folks on the Zoom. So I would like to see if anybody have any questions on this particular date. Maybe a quick 30 seconds for 30 seconds opening for the panel members, participants. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I had a question. So for folks who have downgraded from EB2.
I know your name, ma'am.
This is Uttara from Sacramento.
Okay. Hi.
So for folks who've downgraded from EB2 to EB3, and for those whose priority date is current under the final action date, what is the timeline that we are looking at for our 485 applications to be processed and, get a final verdict on the green card?
So there are a few things that you should have done it. Like I am assuming like the downgraded I-140, is it approved?
Yes.
Okay. And what's the, if you don't mind, what's the priority date?
It's Feb of 2013.
Feb 2013. See, actually, there is no processing time dates that they had been following up. Actually, if anybody's like, looking into it, there is very, very, even for us, we are very surprised, even for a direct 485 filing where it was not a downgrade cases. There was very conflicting information in approvals that's coming in. There is a lot more of approvals coming in every week, it'll be very surprising earlier for us to look into a 485 approvals, but now it's like very quick, once you submit the RFEs or everything. But the surprising part is very, very, very limited downgrade cases getting approved, even though they are in the 2012 and even though with an I-140 being approved. So there are like even the EADs and the APs, it is understandable USCIS, even though they didn't release a statement saying that they are they are not going to be approving or working on the APs, advanced parole, and the I-765, so that they can be approving more number of the 485 cases, or not. I wouldn't say the word approving. They will be working on the process of the 485s. But when it comes to the downgrade cases, there are very limited. Now, recently, we saw that in the last 2 months, the advanced parole and the EADs for the downgrade cases are getting approved. So for a 2013 priority date for a downgrade, I would say it's going to be a very long time that you will be waiting on it, actually. Unless the same, there is not, Charlie has been promising there's not going to be retrogression any more time for at least till 2022 of next year. So assuming that, so then you'll be falling under the queue for the approval of the final 485, the permanent resident card, probably in the September of 2022. And before that, I would say this is what it's going to be, but I would assume, the downgraded cases are going to be definitely waiting when compared to the direct 485 filings.
I see. Okay, thank you. Just another question in addition to that. What do you think or suggest about interfiling of medical records, the I-693 document? Is that something that's recommended, or do we wait for an RFE before we file the I-693?
In terms, it's a good question, as well as the COVID vaccine has been said to be the mandatory now for the 693 form as well, that has been mandated. So interfiling for the medical. So the one thing is USCIS for the cases that the final action dates are current, not for the downgrades in specific, but for a direct filing or anything, even you're on the same queue. We started accepting to file it, and we had seen the approvals for the 485 direct 485 filings where we have submitted the interfiling with the medicals and the case has been approved without an RFE. So I would definitely recommend doing it, and we just tell our clients as well, because we don't want to overpromise. So we had been advising them, but personally, as a firm, I was saying to take a chance, because you can always do that if it's going to help you with a direct approval. And and one part was we are very thorough in whatever we do earlier, from the time when we even had a huge like a rush on the filing of the last year, but most of our cases were filed with the medical. So we had very limited cases, but recently we saw even for them, there was a direct approval that happened without an RFE. So I would ask you to do that as well when your final action dates in particular has been done. But one more thing is, to your doctor's offices, it has a 60 days of validity time before the USCIS accepts. In case if it comes as an RFE, I would also say, and as it's the same record, they can definitely give it with in a sealed envelope, and then talking to them as you had just recently done it, as just to keep them aware of it as well.
I see. Okay. So the 60 days validity that you're talking about, is that from when the doctor, gives the sealed envelope to when it reaches the USCIS?
USCIS, right, yeah.
Is that valid even if the priority date is current?
That's
And
right.
the
See,
60-day validity, is that
no,
applicable even for
actually,
those?
yeah, there is the 4 years validity once the USCIS receives the medical on their record. But the see, just because you're using the interfiling without an RFE and say that it didn't been submitted to the proper officer who's reviewing, and then like in case of an RFE, you're not going to be submitting the older records. You're just going to get another sealed envelope and to be submitted. See, USCIS has made a very different, and we from other attorneys, I heard that even some of their clients are getting a text message that there is a medical RFE that has been issued, and there was someone, not our client actually, he was saying that there were people who even got a phone call from the officer who was reviewing, making sure, because I know, like, see, we should, there are so much of other things that's happening, but we should also appreciate that USCIS is stepping forward to do all this. So with all this scenario, apart from that, what I'm trying to say is, if it doesn't get to reach the appropriate officer, and then if you're going to get an RFE, you should be going back to your doctor and then getting a sealed envelope, which is within the 60 days time period of the doctor's date on that.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I think any more questions from you? Or are we good?
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you. As we're talking about 485, Bharati, can you take those two questions now? From Mohan.
Yeah. Thanks, Raj. Thank you, Mary, for all your detailed answers. I have a few more questions from Mohan on 485. As we all know, 485 is one of the most critical stages in the process, right? So he has some valid, very interesting questions, in fact. So the first one is, during the process, if someone is stuck at India or any other country outside, right? If there is an RFE for 485, can we give an Indian address or a foreign address and take the interview in the US embassy in that country? In this case, India.
Okay, see, there are this is a very different question, so I am assuming they would have traveled only on the advance parole. Actually, that's one of the very minimum requirement that needs to be done when your 485 is adjudicating and the final action dates are current. Definitely, you should be traveling only on your advance parole and not on the H-1B, because the moment that your GC gets approved, you're losing your non-immigrant status. That's something I want to just tell them, listeners about it. So this specific question, see, the interview, if you are in an interview schedule, it's going to be definitely on the specified, the office, the local office, wherever it has to happen. So, it's not something of your choice to move it to that of the consulate, and other options are going to be, you are going to be rescheduling the interview. So if you're stuck over there, even though your final action dates are current, that kind of an expectation might not happen, that where you will be able to allow to do it at a moment when your priority date, final action dates are current, actually. And also with the consulates closed, even for people who are in a very long line from last year for the family-based, even which we are facing, I wouldn't say that it's going to be a very easier option. The better option for you to travel to US as soon as possible and schedule and take the interview. If in worst case of other reasons, you can reschedule it. But again, rescheduling to a consulate of your choice is not going to be something practically possible.
Okay.
Okay, so it should be avoided. That is a message, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is, it may be very obvious for you, but yeah, we would like to understand, if there is a rejection of 485, does it also cancel the priority date, or is there any other?
Yes. Okay. So your, complete rejections of, denial, not a rejection. Rejection is just, it's different. It's a denial, if I mean to say that. Yeah. Yes, you'll be, you'll be lost in the line for whatever the period.
Everything
gone.
is lost, right?
Everything is gone, and
Okay.
you might, if you don't, even if you have your non-immigrant status of H-1B or L-1 or whatever the other non-immigrant status, definitely, that's one of the risks when it is going to be even though where there are limited denials on the 485 employment based, that's one of the reason we advise them to hold on to their non-immigrant status till the adjustment of status is getting approved. So they have to start from scratch, and so probably if everything is lost, then they have to go back and then stay for a year, and then to be back, to be on the cap.
That's a nightmare.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't, I hope nobody goes through that
Go
actually.
through. Yeah, that is
Right.
exactly what I was about to say. Yeah.
And his third point.
Yeah. The third question is travel to India with I-131 pending and now got an RFE to confirm his return. Confirm my return. That's what Mohan says. Will my I-131 be rejected?
It will be abandoned.
Okay, it will be abandoned.
Right.
So,
Because the advance parole is that, you have to be here to get the approval of the advance parole before you travel out of country.
yeah. So Mohan, I think all your questions are, I think you are in a very tricky situation yourself. And I think all your questions are answered. I think they're very clear also, right? And we hope you have some better options to get back to where you wanted to be, right? And
Right.
thank you, Mary, for all the answers. And Rajesh, do you want to take up something on premium for H1 extension and transfers?
Yeah, so before we go there, I think there is somebody named Joe Biden. No, I'm just kidding. Somebody named Joe Biden sent a question from the form about the same. Actually, I think they don't want to disclose their name, so they put they have taken Joe Biden's name. So hey Raj, thanks for the forum. My PD is current, and the 485 application is in October, and have EAD. Been waiting for a medical RFE, and how long this can take, and should I interfile the medical? So I think we answered this question sometime back for the other.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I'm skipping that, taking it to next levels. So there are a few more on that. Okay, so I think one additional question is on the downgrade EBT to EB3. So their priority date is like it's from Manish, I believe. They downgraded from EBT to EB3, and their I-140 of EB3 is also approved. And it's already 10 months that they filed 485. So they are asking how long it would take. It seems like their EB3 downgrade is approved, I-140 is approved, and 485 they filed 10 months back. They're still waiting on it.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, that's said. What's the final action? What's the priority date they set?
August 2011.
Oh, August 2011, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's what happening with the downgraded cases actually. So I would say, just to make sure, they can, just contact the ombudsman office or the congressman and just to call them and ask them, doesn't harm it actually.
Okay. Yeah, so there is another one. So seems like their I-140 is downgraded from EB to EB3, and they've been trying to reach. So they got the receipt number and it's been pending. And when they're trying to call the users, so they are saying that only the petitioner can call. So basically, the petitioner, does it the employer or the immigration attorneys need to talk to them?
See, for the 485, see, the I-140 is a petitioner, the employer, who's the employer, and then the 485 actually is an application, which means the applicant themselves can talk and then do it. So they might be, when calling the USCIS, they might be referring about the I-140. They should be referring the 485 because the I-140, if it's approved, nothing to do with that. So they don't have to refer that as an I-140. Or I-140 can be, in either the employer or the attorney on record can do that. But when it comes to the 485, the applicant or the attorney on record can call the USCIS. So they should be referring the 485 rather than I-140.
Okay, got you. Okay, perfect. So the next topic that would like to start is on the H1B transfers and the premium approvals. I mean, H1B extensions and transfer and the premium approvals. So usually during this season, so once the H1B lotteries is all approved, so usually you see suspends the H1 extensions in a premium mode, right? So I mean, it's been a habitual from the last few days. So is there something that, I mean, any predictions on pause or temporarily holding the premium processing on the H1 and L1, L2 cases?
Actually, like, see, the premium processing even during the COVID time, if it was like in 2019, that's when the last hold for a temporary period on the H1Bs happened. Actually, 2020, even with the COVID situations, surprisingly, there was no temporary suspension on the premium processing that happened actually. And also, as you know, like, the new H1Bs, the time of filing that has been divided is like 3 months, right? Like, not like the earlier period that we are not very sure. Maybe that would have enabled them to process the cases faster or something. So, like, we are seeing a lot more of new H1Bs approved on a regular mode, not only on the premium, which is, which still is new H1Bs as well has a premium processing availability. So on top of it, we see that the cases, even, like I said, on a regular processing, it was very surprising. I was talking to our paralegal and she was saying in a week time, along with the receipt and the approval came for new H1Bs actually. It depends on the service center. Nebraska when compared to, and Texas are little more faster when compared to Vermont and California service centers actually. So depends on where your case is being held, like just being filed. So with all these, I wouldn't expect a premium processing suspension, even if it's going to be temporary for sooner. And with all the other premium processing eligibilities that's going to be coming up in September and everything, I wouldn't be, looking forward for that. But depending on if you have a validity of an I-94, and as you just mentioned, Raj, even at the initial conversation of us stating about the process, I think Bharathi was talking about it, or someone like, like how it's much, much smoother when compared to it. So with all these considered, I would definitely see to it, if at all there is a need for the premium processing, to go for it, or else even a regular processing should be good enough.
Okay. Okay, so that's good. Anything on the new H1B visas that need to be, that the community need to be aware? Because the second lottery is done, and I know you did a short video last, few weeks back. So seems like, there is no official announcement this year about the number of cases being filed and the number of cases being picked in the lottery. So any information or any insights on the new H1B?
Yes, it was like, from the first lottery itself, there is like more number of filings when compared to the last year actually. And so, and also there was expected, there are multiple filings that happened when there is with the different employees, and with all those considered, second lottery happening was definitely expected, but it was like the probability was like, I think I'm not exactly remembering the exact the probability of the second lottery USCIS just gave us on the, the percentage wise, which I don't exactly remember. But even then, there was second lottery that happened, and then, which we have time till November to be filed for. And so the question that came up from so many was, is there going to be a third lottery that can also happen? If the numbers are still available, I would say, even though we are looking forward for the next year closer to it, if, for example, June 30th was the last date of filing for the first lottery. So it was not expected till August, but actually USCIS means that they were able to receive the received petitions, and then they came up in July of third week July itself to release the second lottery. So assuming the same process, even the second lottery numbers will be much lesser when compared to the first lottery. With all these, then I would definitely see that the third lottery possibilities, even though it's going to be of a very minimum probability of, like another numbers that you would be expecting, I would say it's a possibility. The reason is like, even though we are looking at March, which is going to be 4 months, but still the numbers, if it's not going to be wasted and which is going to be allowed for them to accept it, why not? They also will be willing to do it.
Gotcha. Okay, so good. I think we have an interesting question from Prince. Hey, Prince. Do you want to ask your question? It's a pretty lengthy question, I know. So if you want to ask, please unmute.
Sure. Thank you. My question is, my wife is on R2 dependent receipt visa, and I am on, I had an RFE for my R1 visa. So it is applied back. My lawyer replied back for the RFE. And I wanted to check if my wife can get back her H1B. She had her H1B. She didn't finish her 6 years quota. So she only finished 4 years of her quota. So she came back on F2 dependent, and I converted from F2 to R2 dependent. So from R2, she's right now on receipt dependent, waiting for her R2 visa.
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, so you're on the religious visa, right? Or R1?
Yes.
Okay, so for this question, I would say like, we do very limited R1s and R2s actually, but still assuming that your wife has still, so how long was she on the out of 6 years she was on the H1B period?
4 years. She completed her 4 years.
She has 2 years, right? Yeah.
2 more
so
years.
Right. Yeah. Then she can definitely recapture the 2 years of period that she has been remaining on the 6 years with we call it the H1B cap exempt, and definitely she can recapture the 2 years of the 6 years period that was available for her and the older H1B.
So actually, I'm sorry to cut you off, but actually she has like projects coming in now, and if my lawyer says if she needs to get her H1B back, she has to go back to India and get a consular processing, not a premium processing from here. So
okay. Yeah, that's what I was just quickly thinking about it. The only reason is like so she had been over here for the 4 years. She has the eligibility that 2 years of eligibility. So the only thing I'm trying to find it out over here is R2 to that of the H1B. So when it happens in some of the non-immigrant visas, there are limitations where there cannot be a change of status, whereas the consulate approvals are possible, which I'll be looking into it, whether there is a possibility of an R2 to H1B. See, H4 to H1B is eligible, and L2 to H1B is eligible. So the reason is like they cannot start working immediately like a H1B transfer to transfer with a receipt notice, but they can start working on as soon as the H1B gets approved. So I'll be able to just quickly check on it. If you can send an email to our office, and then I can check it out. But definitely she can get it. But even now I'm just thinking through it. Why not she will be able to, because there are limitations. If it's a business visa, they are here and they want to get converted to that of H1B. It's not like they cannot be done. We just request for it, and now with the pandemic situation and the consulate closed, and why don't we just do it as a non-proton and try to do it. It's a very specific a situation question, so I wouldn't go a little more detail into that. Probably you can send us an email and we'll definitely be able to guide you on that.
Perfect.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Prince. Thank you very much. So moving on to the next section. So,
Rajesh, there is a question on I-485. I'll
yes,
quickly,
please.
yeah. So is there any difference in the I-485 adjudication process between an SRC and MSC series receipt numbers?
Yeah, right. Yeah, there is actually, so the National Visa Center was issuing MSC, whereas when it was going to the Texas, and probably particularly if it's a downgraded cases, actually all of them were supposed to go to Texas Service Center at the time of filing in October of 2020. So they would have been issued an SRC number when it came over there, or I'm just assuming this actually. So the applicant might be. So the current scenario is we can't generalize it, and this is not a release date. I just want to make sure I just say that. But Texas Service Center has a very long backlog, and when compared to the other service centers, and also, there are many transfers between the field officers that's happening just to capture the visas that's available. So they are just transferring to the local service and local field officers to make it faster. And you see that on the approvals, when they just see the notification on the online website, name updated, and then your case has been transferred to a local field office. So all these means is like, okay, so your file has been transferred to make it, in the processing little more faster than how it is. So I would say, and one of the criteria that is concerning is the Texas Service Center is very backlogged on the 485s in particular.
Okay. Thank you, Mary. And there is one more question on from Emilia Sharmi on the H4 EAD extension timelines. Emilia, there was a detailed discussion. So Mary covered a lot of things under the H4 EAD agenda, which was the first one that we talked about for almost like 20 to 30 minutes. So if you look at our YouTube recording later, maybe most of your questions will be answered.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Raj. You can move on to.
Yeah. So the next one, the next, I mean, so I didn't even realize that we're almost 1 hour now. So it's going pretty fast, and it's good to see many questions, and then it's educating myself. I'm learning a lot actually. So thank you all the participants and posting questions. And the last section that we are dealing today is on the OPTs and the F1 status stuff. So we have a question from Deepthi Kurapati. Her question is more about, it seems she completed her first master and she got a 3 years OPT and joined the second master's, CPT masters. Since H1 is, even with a lot of, the current H1B process, lottery process, her H1 is not within the lottery process. Should she go back to travel to India and come back with F1 stamping?
Not getting the question properly. So she is on a second master's and she's on the CPT. So she has not been picked up on the H1B lottery. So her question is.
So she has not given the details on when is her H1, when is her visa is expiring or not. But her question is like, let's say, even with the second CPT after completing the first master's OPT 3 years, and then let's say now they're in the second master's on the second college, right? So should they be going out of the country and get the F1 stamping and come back?
I don't understand how she's going to be helping herself in that situation. Like she's on a CPT, and maybe once she completes the master, she's going to be on the, like whatever the eligible remaining period on the OPT and everything. So how does she, like the only question that might come up is like, usually is like when she has been picked up on the H1B lottery, and then if they with the day one CPT, there are limitations of, there is always a question, particularly when it comes to certain universities and colleges and everything, where they are more concerned about the day one CPT, and so they might have to go for the consulate choice rather than an extension. And even if it applied as an extension, there is always an RFE, how the status was maintained from F1 to H1B and all those. So without even getting selected on the lottery, I'm not able to understand what is the purpose of her just to now go back and come actually. So probably, Raj, I would say, like us, we are also closer to the time and everything. Let her send an email, even more detail.
Sure. That's what I'm going to come back to her.
Yeah, connect with her on that as well.
Yeah, sure. I think with this, we are almost touching an hour. In fact, we just crossed an hour. Anybody on the Zoom, if they have any questions, please feel free to drop a note, and you have the link where you can post your questions. Again, so it's great, if Joe Biden writes a question, we are happy, but feel free to write your name. We are not gonna steal any information, but
no, actually, it's also one more criteria is like see you're not doing anything being on a non-immigrant visa, and, you have all rights, and this is another country as well allows that. So, like you should be very, like whoever you are, like just, we are all discussing about, further progress of you. So yeah, that's one of the, like you don't have to be, like whatever the reasoning for this behind it, but I would say you have all rights to show your identity, and that's a better thing to move forward as well. And as
Yeah, so and many times, right? So those questions might not be answered. We might be thinking that those are probably from random emails. So, I mean, my
Right.
humble request: we are here. We are taking time out. It's like everybody else. We also have families. We also have time to spend time. But we are taking a step forward to make a community to aware about the current immigration concerns, and help facilitate, help address the open questions, because I'm sure if one or the otherwise, you are not getting advice, you would be kind of a dog corner. But rather than taking an advice from untrusted sources, take risk, take an advice, take a proper inputs from the advisory sources, and so move forward. That would really really help. I know in my personal experience, I have seen in various instances where I reached out to, back in time, right? So where I reached out to my case managers, it is a nightmare. I have to write 10 emails, 100 phone calls. I wouldn't be getting the answers. But here, one click away, one drop away, you are getting your questions answered with a detailed explanation. So please take this as an opportunity. And we do talk and we do share a lot of information in our personal WhatsApps. Share about this information. Help your friends to leverage or utilize the opportunity to interact with Swara or Mary. And I'm 100%, we are here. And again, we are taking our time. We are spending a lot of, going through a lot of topics to prepare a questionnaire and come back and make this as a fruitful session. So my humble request to all the participants here is to take an advantage of it, come back with the legitimate names. So again, we don't need any of that. We are here for a community service. So please take that advantage and come forward, take this, and then please share this with your friends, colleagues, whoever is in need of it, and share Mary's contact. And again, I'm just a mediator here. If you can forward me, I can get the questions from Mary and I can circle back. And again, you don't need me to. So you have Mary's contact information, her website, and everything is on my banner too. So please feel free to reach out to her and get the right help. Again, immigration is not a joke. It's not an easy thing. Do the things right. We do all, you can compromise on some aspects, but don't compromise on immigration stuff. So just do the things right. As you just listen to it, right? If 480 denial, it is a nightmare. Wasting of, if there is something goes wrong, all the 12, 13 years of line, and if you have to restart, it's not easy. So it's a lifetime, it's a lifetime thing. So please do the things properly. And again, there was a recent video made happen, Mary recorded what need to done. Now we are seeing a lot of 485 approvals. What you need to do right after 485 approval, right? So after 485, you can have a big potluck. You can invite everybody to the party, but there are a few things that everybody must do, like AR11 upgrade. You have to go back to the Social Security. So just watch our videos. So follow our YouTube, follow our Facebook. We'll be keep updating with a lot of quotations. With a lot of updates and more insight short videos. Stay tuned to Swara. Stay tuned to Mary Kennedy's Facebook and YouTube page. With that, signing off today. So Mary and Bharathi, closing statements from you.
Yeah, on the same lines, in this age of information overload, right? Google is everything. Google is the doctor, Google is the lawyer, Google is the trainer. Right? You get everything on Google. And why do we need a session like this? Maybe a question for some of you. And that is the difference, right? The doctors talk about law and lawyers talk about medicine. Everyone talks about everything. You're not sure if the answer that you got from Google is really the right answer or the best answer, right? So with that in mind, a session like this arranged by someone from our own community for keeping our own community in mind, right? And the answers customized specifically for people like us. And that has made this session very useful. And I'm sure it is going to be watched over and over again in coming few days, right? Thank you so much for Swara Media for arranging this and allowing me to be a co-host. And thanks a lot, Mary Kennedy, for spending your time, valuable time on a weekend, on a Saturday afternoon, evening, to share your expertise with us. And thank you. Over to Mary for your closing statements.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bharathi, and as well as Raj. Raj, I know him for a while now. So always I am, like passionate about seeing him, like gives so much of energy to who he is actually. And the service that he does, that, the tireless service of serving the community, it matters a lot actually. Not only for the sake of it, he does it, like always I'd seen him, the passion to just to serve. And then as said, definitely you should be, immigration cannot be taken as granted. And you have various options, like unless you open up and talk about it or get the details and in specific, that helps a lot. And definitely, as said, it's Saturday, so the whole day, when you're committed for it, it goes away. So it's like 6:15 for me. So one day I get it, and then so that. But again, I'm very, very, I always get the energy and the passion when I am asked about immigration. That's who I am. That makes it. So I'm very glad to be part of it. And then for our whatever has been said, and Swara Media, definitely that arranging it, taking care of it. That's all a huge part that plays a role. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all. So with that, signing off for today. We'll come back again for next month. No, next month with more visa. September. I know everybody must be waiting for September visa bulletin. We'll be coming back in the September month again with more interesting topics. Until then, see you all. Please do like, comment, follow our pages, and please do share these videos to your friends and family. So I know it just take a one click away in WhatsApp, but it means a lot for many community folks. Thank you all.
Thank you. Good night for you all. Bye.